And that's in my Blackland Prairie soil. You switched me sideways.
You have to flood the ground for the rice.
No, I actually grow the rice in the pond. So when we started using cover crops in our yard, we had dry, cracked soil and Blackland Prairie soil. And we put in these cover crops because we were like, we got to do something. I don't want to put traditional grass in. And what happened was, it was really a shocker. Everything got extremely moist. And the tall grasses actually trap the dew and the moisture and we're self-watering. And we don't really water them because there's this thing that happens when you put in that kind of cover crop, it actually brings in the moisture. 40% of our local rainfall is from moisture from our plants. So the more plants you have, the more moisture you're going to have. So when you have this, it's a buffer for heat waves, for polar vortexes. You stay cooler and less dry in summer, heat waves warmer in the winter, as the heat and coldness that is kept in the ground has resulted in less plant death. When your plants are hydrated during extreme temperatures, they survive better. So how do we create this moisture? How do we do this? All right. So this is what I was just talking about. Why does respiration and soil moisture matter? Plants release moisture through transpiration, making humidity and attract moisture in the form of dew, creating your local water system. In the morning, you can see all the moisture that has developed in the night and then becomes water vapor during the day. This is your system of moisture. That condensation then eventually comes back down as rain. 40% of our rain comes from small local water cycles. If your soil is bare, you will have more evaporation. When you add organic matter to the soil and plant cover crops, you build more than fertility, you build soil moisture and soil carbon. This moisture and carbon keep the microorganisms alive. When the small water cycles are disrupted due to plant or tree loss or from over harvesting or freezes, we have desertification. So you've probably noticed that sand that has been blowing around town. Well, that's what happens when we have bare dirt. The wind takes it away and that soil is lost, and that's carbon that's being lost. And so if we plant in those dry areas, then we won't have it's a hard word, desertification. And it's something that's very real and has happened to all the cultures around the world. So heat radiates off bare soil. When hot air is going out instead of attracting rain, the hot air pushes the rain away. That's why no bare soil is important. So how do we sequester carbon? Or is it called carbon capture? I looked this up today. Carbon capture is actually the way they capture carbon from industrial emissions. Sequestering carbon is actually the biological way of saying capturing carbon. It's the removal and storage of carbon dioxide from the Earth's atmosphere. By adding more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, we are supercharging the natural greenhouse effect, causing global temperatures to rise. Plants remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and exude it and store it in the soil. This is called carbon sequestration. Mycorrhizal fungi and bacteria are responsible for doing that. As gardeners, we must refrain from using chemicals. These disrupt the soil life. The reason that is so important is because the microbes sequester the carbon. And if we're killing them all, then they can't do that for us. So this is how you be a climate change gardener. So here's can you see it? It's not a great slide, but it's one of the slides they showed at the conference. Can you imagine our city looking like that? I was trying to imagine what we can see as hope in the future. What will bring us hope? What will bring us to make a change in how we grow things and how we do things so that we can fight this? And really, I don't like to call it fight it. I like to call heal it, because we're not fighting it. We're healing the planet. We're healing ourselves. We're healing the soil. So So cover crops act as living mulches and increase soil carbon due to their deep bushy roots. When we move toward having plants and living roots in the ground all year, you notice an increase in biodiversity and sequestering of carbon. Cover crops reduce soil and wind erosion, reduce unwanted weeds, and decrease water runoff. When you improve your soil, you reduce evaporation, and you also fix nitrogen when you plant legumes. Plant cover crops so the soil will never be bare. The carbon is also a plant material when you reuse your yard waste. This material becomes organic soil matter. When you remove it, you deplete soil matter. And when you keep it, you have a carbon accumulator. Okay. So how do you plant cover crops? Here we go. So we have some cover crop seeds over there. I don't know if you saw those. There's some for winter and there's some for summer. She's holding them up. And there's also some lists over there that list all those. So I do something very special that I come up with the last couple months, and I call it a seed sandwich. So at the conference, they were talking about these machines that poke holes in the mulch and put the seeds in, but none of us are going to have that. So I do this thing called a seed sandwich where I kind of make it flat, rake it, mow it, whatever. And then I put down a small amount of compost. I pre-soak my seeds and I use inoculant. So have you ever seen inoculant and you want to come up here and look at some of these? These are some of they last forever. These are some of the ones I use. And it's basically a powdery substance. You put it with your seeds and I soak them in rainwater. And the reason I do that is because chlorine kills microbes. So if you want to use inoculate with your seeds, use filtered water or rainwater, whatever you got, and let them soak for a few hours. And then I put them down and then I put another ½ inch on top of that, keeping it all wet. I call it the seed sandwich. And that's given us really good sprouting. If you have that kind of moisture that it keeps it wet. If you could sling it down, but we just don't have good rainfall like we used to. So I want to absolutely make sure my seeds are not going to waste. And that's why I do that method. So on the table over there, there's this inoculation instruction. If you want one of those, I think there's only like 3. So if you want to take a picture of it, if you want it, and it's over there on the table. This is another thing that I found at the conference, and I tried to make pictures of it or copies of it, but it was on dark green paper. That's also over there, and you can take pictures of it. I found this very fascinating. These are actually native plants that you can use as a cover crop. And I don't know where you'd get the seeds for that, but lamb's quarter is one of them, and that's pretty easy to get. And it's not a great picture, but there's a few there. But that's a really awesome way to help with native habitat. It's actually use the natives that do the same thing as the stuff that you would buy. So soil temps for microbes. So microbes thrive in moderate temperatures, moist soil, 60 to 85. If your soil is left bare and dry, the temperature with bare and dry can be 160 or more. But if you've got it mulched and cover cropped and even if your cover crop's dead, you're still keeping the soil temperature much lower enough to keep them alive to the next season. So I think that's pretty good. So the timing of planting cover crops. So I plant them, my husband and I plant them when the seasons change. So, and there's going to be a rain event. I literally will run out in the yard and plant something if it's going to rain or prep for days ahead of time and get that everything mowed and mulched and watered, ready for that rain to come down. And so that like in the fall and then in the spring. So basically when you're changing your vegetables, you want to change your cover crops too. And you can time it. You can, like this year, I think I might actually plant the summer ones again because we might have, a lot of heat for another 2 months and then put the winter one in because, basically it was too hot to plant one this summer. So, it's all what you want to do. So does anybody here have a certified wildlife habitat? Oh my God, guys, this is the thing. I'm serious. You get one of these and you do what it says, provide water, habitat, whatever. It's not a lot of stuff. And then the city leaves you alone and you can have tall grass and nobody bothers you. I am serious. I have called the city and asked them and they said, sure, you can do that. Certified wildlife habitat, $40, you get your sign. So I've had one for 7 years. When I first got in our house, we got the, citation, your grass is too long. And I was, oh no. And so then I went and got that. A friend had one. I'm going to get that. And I said, do you never mow? She said, I never mow. And she got one and no problem. And for 7 years there, we have had zero problem. So that's my 2 cents. Yeah. Oh, you're right. Any questions?
Better.
Go ahead.
I have a question. With such tall vegetation, how do you go out there and enjoy it without getting a million chiggers?
We don't have chiggers.
What?
We don't have chiggers.
I've grown veg before in clover, and I like to have wildflowers in my backyard, but those, at least what I've planted, maybe I'm planting too thickly, but got 2 monocultures, 2 years in a row, clover 1 year, and then veg, it was so dense and nothing else would come up.
Wow. That's great.
Well, I don't want my wildflowers to come up.
Oh yeah. I've had a lot of trouble with wildflowers too. Anybody, do you know more about wildflowers?
Yeah, the wildflowers are going to be more subservient to like your prairie grasses. So it's like wildflowers first and then grasses. So you started with like more of the grasses first. And so they're going to constantly outgrow those wildflowers. You maybe try to keep it covered with heavy mulch and just do some weeding or try to tarp it for a few months, let the grass seed go back dormant. Try again with the wildflowers.
What about planting cover crops that grow wildflowers, like put loose in and things like that? Native grass.
I just know.
Does that serve as a cover crop?
Yes, I'm just not trying blue stem. I can't talk on it, but we just bought some and we put a little bit in. So I'm not sure, but I definitely don't like rye. It's very aggressive year after year. And so you won't let anything else grow.
I emailed the Wildflower Center.
But yeah,
Just to get their opinion on it.
we get a few things, Gaillardia, a lot of poppies, this and that, flax, things like that. But honestly, they just have a hard time competing, but they do. But the other thing is if you're planting your cover crops, you're sequestering carbon and you're creating soil moisture, and that's really good for the climate. Yeah. But I would put wildflowers in more drier areas with more, less vegetation, and they won't have any competition.
And then when you want to get rid of the cover crop and then plant, you mow it.
Yeah, so a lot of these recommend chopping it, dropping it and all that. Honestly, our weather's so terrible, it dies. So, I never mow it unless, it's like, okay, you're still alive. Okay. And I got to plant. So, but honestly, it's just like such strong seasons here. So, yeah, no, it's good.
Here's the thing that's not bad.
I don't think there's any buckwheat in that one. Yeah. Yeah, it's a combination of this and that. It's really a combination of what I listed previously, but when the poppies come, it's my favorite time. So.
Then your introduction to this landscape or encourage other people in your neighborhood to
I wish. I swear to God, I live in a desert. No, everything's very clipped, close to the ground. Dust is blowing everywhere. I'm this like green oasis in the middle of a very dry neighborhood. People there just don't, we literally have all the wildlife in our yard. Frogs, turtles, toads, lizards, skinks. I mean, it's crazy because there's no place else to go.
and you have a pond.
And we have several ponds, yeah.
How long does it take? Like, what does it look like the first year?
A half a season and it looked like that. We were stunned. We couldn't believe it. Yeah.
I have this like fourth monster grass. So I don't really, it's kind of taking over. How would you suggest removing it?
I don't know mondegrass, do you?
I'm not familiar with it, but
Yeah.
It's just like a very low growing spreads. I wouldn't consider it a covercrop based, but
I would ask either A&M because they do a lot of specialty grass work and stuff like that, or again, the Wildflower Center.
Or natural gardener.
Yeah.
I might remove it.
Yeah, asking like,
I never remove anything, honestly. I never like bare dirt. I think bare dirt is terrible. So if you're gonna remove something, plant something on top of it or mulch it and then plant right away, because bare dirt is terrible for the climate, terrible for your dirt, terrible for the microbes in the dirt, so. Anything else? One more?
Legumes as a covercrop, do you use it cut them as they flower?
I actually eat them. Austrian peas are delicious. And they do all that pulling of nitrogen into the ground and they're really delicious and they live through freezes. What's not to love? As soon as the heat comes, they're gone. So I let them go all the way out. And that's just me. Some people chop and drop. I'm just not one of them.
So Mary, there's a few questions on the Zoom.
I don't think so. It makes nodes in the ground and then when it dies, they stay there. I think so. Yeah. You ready?
So there's a few questions on the Zoom.
questions.
Oh, there's questions, really?
There's 15 or so.
Oh my God.
15 or so chats.
Where I found it.
If you want to go over there to
Oh,
the
the
third
thingy.
monitor, I'll pull them up for you.
So can you hear me? Because I can ask the question.
Oh, actually, they're over here. Come back over here.
Can you hear me, Austin?
All right.
Oh, here we go. Okay, so it says, do you have a different list of cover crops for caliche or will the same cover crops work? I have a fair bit of caliche, so I would say they're the same. I would, if I had caliche, I'd probably be doing more natives just because your dirt is so little, you know, and you got to really build your soil fertility. And so natives really hold the dirt long term perennially. Perennially is really important for not drying out in the cold. So if you have very little dirt, plant natives, honestly. Yeah. Why don't you think you have chiggers? I don't know. I'm not in Arkansas. Are chiggers in Arkansas?
We got some here.
Yeah.
I've had my legs cut up by them before.
Yeah.
Down
I
at
think chiggers have a lot to do with moisture. And so the moisture's in cycle. It's not hanging out in the ground. So maybe that's it. Does growing wildflowers as a cover crop for a couple years then make it difficult to create a more formal garden? New plants have to compete with self-seeded wildflowers. Dude, if you have wildflowers growing continually, I'd be thrilled. So cover crops build your soil, but wildflowers build your community of pollinators. So that's a hard choice. Yeah. I would go with the wildflowers. Is that it?
I think that's it.
All right, great.
Cool. I'll take that.
Take that.